Our side repeated, clearer this time. Romeo, this is Juliet. Do you copy? He looked at us and shrugged. We still didn't have visual line of sight of the place as it was still several miles away and the roads were winding. But the radios technically had line of sight. The strongest radios were installed on the truck and could reach out through even the heavy forest that had started to grow and beamed above the dilapidated towns out 10 miles or more sometimes if we got high enough. Finally, after about 30 seconds, the CO said, "Try them again, and if we don't hear anything, we'll go with Plan Charlie." That meant to assume the place had been compromised with no communication of which to verify. Our contact was about to start radioing them back when a female voice came over our headsets. "This is Julie," I copy. We all looked at our outreach officer like, what the hell? When we all went back to look back to where... then we all went back to look back to where we were supposed to be. To our comms guy's credit, he took it completely professionally and in stride, and said calmly, "Hello, Julie. I hope you are having a nice day today. I was wondering if the boss was around. Is he around? Over." Julie didn't respond for maybe 20 seconds, but it could have been shorter or longer as time seemed to freeze. Then finally, "Sorry, the boss is sick. In fact, we're all sick. You should stay away because we're very sick, very sick. I have to go. Sorry." And that was it. Our CO said to our outreach officer, "Well, what do you make of that?" It was a half question and half WTF. To which he responded, "Well, first of all, I don't know anyone there named Julie." He said plainly as if stating a fact, but not putting any additional story together quite yet. The CO then responded, "Well, we can't go with Plan Bravo then." That was if we make contact but still compromised. Because they're contaminated. We risk contaminating our own colony. Suggestions? I already knew the answer to this because I had studied these scenarios many times prior to the collapse. You have to have someone enter the quarantine zone with a radio, establish contact, threat assess, etc., then relay information back so you can actually figure out what's going on. Otherwise, you risk both contaminating your group and introducing your contaminants with theirs and making them even more sick in their weakened state. I stood forward and offered, "I have a suggestion. I have been getting sick my entire life and nothing life-threatening has ever happened. If anyone's going to risk it, and best to analyze the situation, it should be me. I have a radio, full kit, medical in my 72-hour bag, so what if I go in? If the place has been infiltrated, I'll call you guys in to wipe out the bad guys, and we'll all get sick. Radio the farm from a safe distance, and I'll let them know whatever the new plan will be." Nobody said anything, so I continued. "If the building hasn't been infiltrated and they're sick, at least only I'll be sick. That way you guys can quarantine me by myself, driving me home outside the truck or something until I get better back at the farm, where I will just stay in my tiny home." About half their mouths dropped and the other half just face-palmed, as they usually did whenever I came up with stuff like this. The CO said, "Anybody else?" Nobody said anything, so the comms officer double-checked my channels with me, and everyone spared me a few snacks from my bag with the room I had left, and we split off into groups to get ready. Chapter 8, Parting Ways. "Oh, before you leave," the comms officer said, "we just found a stash of higher quality mics. They're going to be better than your crappy stock mic you've been using, and at least now you'll have a spare. We've got one for everybody and reserved one especially for you. I've seen a few people with them, so I sort of understood how they worked and didn't want to look stupid like I didn't know. I unpackaged it and looped it under my outer clothing and around my neck where the mic hung, and put an earpiece in my ear. Then I put the packaging in my pocket." Our comms officer continued, "It will feel like a baby is choking you for a little bit, but after a while you won't even realize it. You can talk to us completely normal and we'll be able to hear you way better. Also, you'll be able to hear us significantly better because the earbud is much higher quality, too. I let him know I was thankful. Then the CO said, don't forget protocol. Establish if there actually is a virus and let us know. Establish if there actually is a human threat and let us know. You're going to take the scenic route. We'll establish a forward position to make sure, hopefully, nobody's paying attention to your entry. At that point, the outreach officer, comms guy, gave me an entry card and said, this works for the basement parking garage. It isn't on the same system as everything else, so most people won't know how to shut it off if there are bad guys. Hopefully it gets you in. He handed me a second piece of paper with a PIN number on it, and then the CO said, we'll get closer to make sure comms work solid and make sure we can actually offer support. Any questions? I couldn't think of any questions or anything in particularly sarcastic to say. I thought about asking more about the security chief so I would know how to make contact, but I knew some of it and could figure out the rest later. I'm good, guys, I think, I said, then said, check, 111 into my mic. They gave me a thumbs up. One of them said 5x5 back. 2 more bobbed their heads, and one gave me a thumbs up. I nodded back in appreciation. Sounds good, RCO said. Radio silence for about 30. We'll set up a forward position and defensive perimeter. That should give you time to hike around and get to the basement. Check your watch. We'll plan on reestablishing radios then, okay? I looked down at my watch. I was finally able to get one of those shockproof watches again like I'd had as a kid, with helpful things that I actually needed to know. They had fallen out of style when smartphones came in, but as the collapse got closer, everyone realized these were the way to go. I hadn't been able to get one because of money, but the guys knew I was without it and found one for me. We held our watches up to each other, and sure enough, they were synced, even though we knew they would be. These watches auto-synced with each other, among all kinds of other things they could do. The watches were in fact synced down to the millisecond, which was mesmerizing to watch if you let it absorb you. They also absorbed sunlight and body heat to power themselves, and a battery backup inside, and essentially could run for eternity. I took a mental note of when a half hour from now would be and said, okay, sounds good, to the guys. With nobody saying anything else, I gave them a snappy salute just for fun, waved, and said I would talk to them online in a little bit, and then I walked down a path nearby. With each step I took, I could hear them starting to talk. They were presumably going over the plan, and within a minute I heard them load up and slowly and meticulously start to make their way forward. One truck scooting forward while the other covered, and vice versa. It was slow, but the safest. Chapter 9, Walking Alone to the River. It was beginning to be a sunny day. Not warm, but definitely pleasant to be outside. The birds were singing about something, but I didn't notice anything else in the way of wildlife. Was the apparent reduction due to hunting or trapping? Or maybe just no critters were out yet? I wasn't sure. It was probably just my imagination, but I thought for sure I would notice a squirrel or something furry running around by now. Spring was very much letting me know that it was the current season, though, and I noticed all of the fruit-bearing plants were starting to want to flower. It smelled and looked beautiful here, with the various trees and shrubs beginning to bloom. Almost a sweet smell to the air. One of the things that happened after the collapse was that all of the useless bushes got systemically torn out and burned. Care, of course, was given to the critters to make sure they had homes to go to. Not like before, where entire areas were clear-cut for subdivisions that were cheaply built only to be purchased by landlords instead of homeowners. What a stupid situation that had been. We didn't want to repeat the old style of clearing, so as useless shrubs were removed, we immediately replaced them with fruit-producing bushes. We scavenged every single last bush and tree we could find lingering in the abandoned plant nurseries and big box stores that nobody wanted, were too expensive, or were too scrawny. Any plant nursery store owners that we discovered that were holding out with nowhere to go, we offered them and their families relocation to a protected farm of their choice. They all considered it more than a fair trade. By that point, all of the other side's sympathizers had gone to the perceived protection of the city-state if they believed that their side was safer anyway. So it worked out pretty well for us scooping up good folks that were just scared and didn't know where to go.